Thanks so much, Autumn, and thank you all for joining us this morning. I can't tell you how happy I am to be joined by Caroline. Caroline and I have worked on several projects for our various clients where we have just a great time kind of brainstorming and having Caroline's perspective brought to the table for this webinar, particularly for the gaming section, really is something wonderful because I'll be quite honest. We wouldn't have a gaming section in today's webinar if we didn't have Caroline participating, because I'm just not facile enough to pick that up and run with it in an authentic way. But to start us off, what I'd like to do is all of us to kind of reconsider what technology means in Gen Z's life today. 10 years ago, BuzzBack did research among Gen Zers who are now in their mid-20s. Not the same Gen Zers, it wasn't longitudinal, but 10 years ago, we knew that we needed to get a real understanding and bring, to life this younger generation for our clients. And at that time, the question everybody wanted us to answer was, what technologies is Gen Z using, when, and why? And this was valid. We were all observing in real time what it meant to be a digital native and what it meant to market to and connect with this first truly digital generation. Today, the why they use tech has expanded exponentially, not just because of the advances in the tech itself, although obviously that plays a part, but because of what Gen Z asks tech to do and what they expect it to do for them and how they expect it to make them feel. So in 2015, tech primarily helped young people and all of us access things. We were accessing information, we were accessing entertainment, we were accessing our friends, we were accessing products. And when Gen Z didn't want to access these things, they put the phone down, even if it was sometimes at the request of a parent during dinner. But now, if you ask a Gen Zer, especially one in their early 20s or teens, to put their technology down, they look at you like you have lost your mind. You might as well ask them to go outside with no pants on. How do I know this? Because I have three Gen Zers currently living with me, and well, they are mine. They're not just boarders. And truly, when you ask them to put their phone down, it's like you have cut off something that they really do feel like they need to be who they are. We're going to talk about this today, and we're going to talk about it for better and for worse. So let's take a look at what we'll be chatting about as I advance the slide forward. I always find it's a little bit slow when we've got an image. There we go. So what are we going to cover today? We'll talk about the overall role in Gen Z's lives. Then we're going to move into social media, gaming, and some AI. All of these things address different emotional needs. Social helps address identity. Gaming goes beyond connection and entertainment and really is about creating a sense of agency for Gen Zers who game. And AI adds capacity, increases what we can all do, and Gen Z is right along with that. So we'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of social media. For gaming, we'll talk about how those underlying emotions that are satisfied through gaming can be applied to different industries and different brands, both within and outside of gaming. And for AI, the important thing about the data that we'll share is that it is truly point-in-time data. So often when we do market research, we can say, okay, we can expect behaviors to stay relatively steady, maybe check in with people twice a year, once a year if we're talking about values and attitudes that tend to be very slow and changing. That is not the case with AI. So it's point-in-time data. But what we'd like to do today is offer you a construct on how to think about Gen Z and AI so that as they evolve, as we all evolve in what we do and what we lean on AI to help us do, has a kind of structure around it to help us think about the different roles, we're calling them archetypes, AI plays in people's lives. So very quickly, if you have been with us for prior webinars, you know that we surveyed Gen Z and millennials. Really, the focus was to survey millennials to give a little bit more context to Gen Z and bring to life ways in which they're different. And we did this survey in both the UK and the US. There are extraordinarily similar stories, particularly in the tech space across those two markets. So we present the average of the markets across the Gen Z in total and the different age cohorts, save for minor nuances. And if it was something really big, then we do call it out, and we can talk about them separately. But it's a remarkably similar story across these markets. Before we get into the webinar content, I'd just like to share a few thoughts on who we are at Buzzback and why we even decided to invest in this series about Gen Z. So at Buzzback, we've been relentlessly pursuing the why for over 25 years. We seek to reveal people's true identities. We want to unpack their motivations, understand how those motivations link back and are manifested through their values, and a way in which we strive to do this. Yes, lots of qualitative information, lots of qualitative methodologies and studies. But even when we're asked to do a quant study, we are always infusing some qualitative methodologies into that. And I'm talking about going beyond just the standard open end. We do things like have people make collages, and some of that you'll see here. We use projective techniques to kind of free people up from being stuck in their own minds and tell us, well, what do you think those two people are talking about? And you'll see those exercises come through. And all of that is in pursuit of bringing to life the why for our clients. So let's jump in. So before we can fully understand the nature of Gen Z's relationship with tech, we really need to just remind ourselves of the context and the state of mind and the emotional state that they are in. This is a generation that's carrying higher levels of overwhelm, stress, and anxiety than the millennials that preceded them. Technology is not entering a blank slate. It's responding to some real emotional needs. So we've shared versions of this data in previous webinars, but I just felt it was so important to recognize that the anxiety and sense of overwhelm that Gen Z feels is real. It isn't just some like hyperbolic headline that's often thrown out there where older people like me do an eye roll and, oh yeah, every generation thinks they're the most stressed generation. This is palpable when you talk to and when you see and when you read some of the responses and some of the videos that have been shown in prior webinars bring to life this true pressure that we just simply cannot ignore and chalk it up to young people think they have it worse than the generation before them. There is something fundamentally different about how this generation feels and the world in which they're coming of age. So how do they cope? Again, this was introduced in one of our wellness webinars on Gen Z, but it's so important to set that context, as I mentioned. So Gen Z manages stress in real time. Compared to millennials, they use more passive, immediate coping skills like music, watching videos, or scrolling on social media. When they think about using technology at this point in time, they're using it more to escape their stress than to actually improve upon the state of their emotions. I'm not suggesting that none of them are using wellness apps and mental health apps. They are, but again, in relation to millennial, they are still looking for that just quick escape. And when they do need to escape their stress, many of them prefer grounding that's solitary and digital, being alone, gaming, wearing the headphones to block everybody out, and watching content independently. When we were putting together the webinar, there were a lot of these slides that Caroline and I talked about together. And I know, Caroline, you wanted to jump in a little bit on this slide.
Yes, absolutely. And really, just as someone who's a Gen Z, millennial cusp baby, I see myself really reflected in both of these buckets. So I'm really the type of person, I am so happy to just dive into an Instagram reel for hours on end, just laughing at some absolute nonsense. The World Cup memes have been particularly my favorite as of late, but that's because I need a mental break. But I also recognize, and frankly, I'm almost frustrated by that the things that I do for my long-term well-being, like my weeknight gym routine, are actually good for my mental health, not to mention my physical health. And I really do feel better when I stick to the routine versus just lazing out on my Steam Deck for a couple of nights. So really, the duality of woman, what can you do there?
So this right here is a starting place for how Gen Z thinks about tech on an emotional level. So they know just as well as we do how many articles have been published about the downside of tech and how it's impacting our brains, or maybe not impacting our brains, because it's almost like red wine. One day it's good for you, the other day it's not good for you. Sometimes it's good in moderation, sometimes not at all. So at the end of the day, about 7 in 10 in the US and the UK believe that technology improves their well-being. That's really a remarkable vote of confidence. And it suggests that they're evaluating technology a little bit differently than older generations have. They also name specific types of technology that they feel supports their well-being. Look at the number for social media. 6 in 10 Gen Z say that social media supports their well-being, compared to just under half of millennials. Half feel like gaming supports their well-being, and that could be any type of gaming, whether it's on your mobile, console, computer. Yes, they are using mental health apps, maybe a little tiny bit more than millennials. And they're also looking at AI tools as a way to support well-being. So this is actually what gave us the first, oh gosh, this is where we should focus our webinar: social media, gaming, AI. So we will stay with the well-being theme, but we'll also expand outside of the well-being theme to bring a more robust lens into each of these different technologies that we'll focus on today. So at the end of the day, the value isn't in the tech itself. It doesn't really matter what the device is. It doesn't really matter what the code is. It's all about what the tech facilitates. In the case of social media and gaming, it's community. It could be entertainment. It could be identity building across any of these examples. But as we all know, tech comes with trade-offs, and Gen Z knows this as well. So on the left-hand side of the chart, we've got several agree statements. When we think of those just by themselves, the percentage who agrees with each of those three statements is between 6 and 7 in 10. We also presented the respondents to our survey a set of negative statements about Gen Z, and about 4 to 6 in 10 agreed with some of the negative statements, agreed with each of the negative statements that you see on the right-hand side. But then we wanted to see what percentage of people actually agreed with both. And that's the number that you see in the middle. So you can see that a plurality of Gen Z are holding these diametrically opposed ideas internally at the same time. Tech makes my life easier. It can add more complexity. I'm excited about tech improving my everyday life, but tech evolves so quickly, it feels overwhelming. And tech can help me feel connected and informed, but it also results in some pressure to keep up, because maybe I'm not going to be as informed as my peers or as I myself want to be, because it's so hard to keep up. So tech comes with trade-offs, and people hold that paradox internally within them.
Yes.
Caroline,
And
why don't you take the slide away and talk a little bit
yeah.
about what this is?
Yes, in e-collage, Kristen, you had already talked a little bit about that at the top of the conversation. And what we're looking at here is the output of BuzzBack's proprietary e-collage tool, which is something that we will use in both of our qualitative and quantitative projects. And just quickly summarized, e-collage is a collaging tool, it's in the name, where we'll provide respondents with an image library with the opportunity for them to add some additional images in on their own time if they're so inclined. And they will answer our research question with images instead of words. Following the completion of the collage, we'll have them share a sentence or two just to walk us through, what does the e-collage represent and why they selected the images that they did. So I've personally been using e-collage in a variety of different methodologies and research platforms over my 10-year career at BuzzBack. And the feedback that we're getting from respondents year after year just keeps getting richer and richer. I know it's cliche and I hate that I have to say it, but I'm going to say it. A picture really is worth 1,000 words, right? And I'm always just so excited by what eCollage helps our study participants unlock. So in this situation, it is really a super tough mind exercise for me to personally disentangle how tech is a boon and a bane in my own life. So I'm really impressed by the color and depth that this respondent from the UK got here. So specifically that tech is something that helps him feel better temporarily, but he simultaneously recognizes that it's not quite the long-term solution that he needs. So really, again, as Kristen mentioned, that paradox at play there. And I do think an open end like this too, maybe just a little harder to come by in a more traditional quant survey as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So
And
social, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to say we'll get into social media, but you can take it away, Kristen.
I'm going to go ahead and flip right to the next slide that really brings to life that yin and the yang and the pressure and the positivity that social media can bring to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've been talking about, it's a paradox. It's relieving pressure, it's also creating pressure. And really it's the double-edged sword. What else? It's just kind of the perfect image for me personally. And with this generation, while they are getting generation to seize life from social media, so discovering new ways of self-expression, getting them towards their goals, all of that good stuff, it's also simultaneously besetting a very heavy pressure upon them, right? So they can see people take incredible trips and feel one way or another about, the lack of trips that they may have not been on, in their however many years of life, or, the body image issues that stem from the various platforms out there. Really here, the good is coming with the bad. And I think we can all agree with this. It can be really hard to swipe away from it all.
I like how you did that, Caroline. Swipe away from it all,
Yeah.
like you're alive. I also want to note that for a question like this, we actually only allow people to select up to 3 responses. So that's one of the reasons that you might see some percentages that feel a little bit low. So what we wanted to do is kind of bring them to life with the words of our respondents directly. So tech comes up even when we might not expect it to. So neither of these questions that we asked in the survey were specifically about technology. So we asked, imagine this person, this is our thought bubble technique for both of these questions. Imagine this person is the same age as you and is posting about their biggest fear in life. What are they saying and why? From a 28-year-old female in the US, they're probably posting about the fear of being judged by everyone in the world, especially on social media. It can be so cruel these days, and it's hard to ignore it most of the time. And on the right-hand side, this really brings to life that paradox. This question was about, imagine these two friends are talking about things they do to feel emotionally grounded. So the question had nothing at all to do with technology. What helpful methods are they sharing? And two people, one US, one UK, several more than two people, but these are, exemplars of what we were hearing from people. Well, they watch videos and stream. They also play videos with each other to distract them from their problems. And then the second person that we're showing here, they're talking about getting away from their screens and utilizing non-screen time activities such as reading and journaling. So truly holding those, as a whole, the generation does see the good and the bad in social media. So this notion of digital drain, it's imposed, but it's also self-inflicted. When we ask people what tech experiences drain you the most, they tell us ads popping up. Everybody hears, everyone complains my social media feed, regardless of platform, feels just one big advertisement these days. But look at that second item, 43% say that endless scrolling drains them. The feed is not scrolling for you. You have to be on the feed and doing it yourself. So it's self-inflicted at some point. Um, we could just put the phones down. So this is a post that I saw on a Reddit group, and someone, the OP, posted an image on the back of his phone. It says, social media seriously harms your mental health. And the first comment was, I agree, keep scrolling away. So there's a little bit of behavioral stuff going on here, but also this idea of algorithms deciding what I see, the ads, as I mentioned, the news constantly coming up, the notifications pinging us. Those things are largely out of our control, especially the algorithms. And today's young people, even at the high school level, they do understand that algorithms and someone else beyond them is largely deciding what's going to come up on their feeds. So clicking to the next slide. Social media really is an emotionally recursive cycle. You're stressed, you need a quick outlet, you pick up the phone, it promises connection, distraction, maybe reassurance in some way, but you're not in control of the content. So those signals of inadequacy and pressure, whether it's pressure to buy, whether it's pressure to look, whether it's pressure to pursue a certain path comes into play. It causes the stress to build, and the cycle starts all over again. What does this mean for brands? What we want to do as brands is to lead with an emotional payoff. a sense of calm, connection, inspiration, or giving people a reset. We want to reduce the imposed drain that we're putting onto people, whether we are the company that is creating the algorithms, which most of us are not, or whether it's the company that's buying ad space. Fewer interruptions and clearer controls. It doesn't mean to stop advertising, but maybe it means to do a little bit of a rethink. So the advertising doesn't feel so jarring. Maybe it feels more like content. Maybe it feels more like entertainment. Let Gen Z curate and pace experiences. They don't want to be in the mindless scrolling loop. Yes, they get there. Sometimes we all stay there, but it's not something we ever feel all that great about when we do stop scrolling. So let them figure out the pace and the time in which they want to invest in scrolling and looking and looking. These three things build up to seating control. Create value for yourself and your value and your brand by allowing Gen Z to access messaging when they want it, make it easy to leave messaging when they want it, easy to return to. Can we go beyond the save this ad? Can we do things like, can you just put all my ads in one place and I'll take a look at them when I want to? I know it breaks a lot of the rules of social media advertising, but something's got to give to make this feel better to Gen Z. And I do believe the brands that help them feel better are the brands that will win. Build repeatable rituals without designing for dependency, and let Gen Z know this. Let Gen Z understand how you're making decisions about how to message them, how to reach them, and why. It might not take the sting away of feeling like you're being interrupted, but when people understand why you're doing something, they tend to have quite a bit more tolerance for it, and they really can appreciate being let in on the inside scoop. So now we're going to go into our gaming category, and I'm going to kick it back over to Caroline.
Yes, all things gaming, that's what I'm here for. So, gaming, no matter what genre you choose, what platform you choose, PC is the better one for those who are listening. It's something that people and brands should not be sleeping on because of what it reveals about Gen Z in our increasingly uncertain world, their inherent need for agency. It has truly come a very, very long way of being the hobby of those so-called basement dwellers, wherever they may be. So across the research that Buzzback has done, we see that gaming deeply resonates with Gen Z because it's an experience that allows them to call the shots within whatever universe they choose to immerse themselves in. It's not just simple entertainment anymore. It's a way to show off to friends and family alike with their progress and their achievements. It's a form of self-satisfaction when they really just have mastered a game, whatever that one may be. It's also an avenue for creativity from, the most simplistic Tetris rounds, right? I think we all have played Tetris in some shape or form, to something as complicated as navigating competing factions and their ever-changing interest in Kingdom Come Deliverance too. And let me be the first to say that this gaming hobby isn't something that this generation is going to outgrow. So I started at age 4 playing Diablo 2. Yes, that is something that my parents said was fine. I think it was a little bit questionable in hindsight, reflecting back. But I am now 31 years old and I'm very much still a gamer. So I spent some of my formative years trying just to get further and further in the Mad Cow level in Diablo 2 until World of Warcraft got its hooks into me in the 3rd grade. And this isn't just a Gen Z phenomenon. Millennials, Gen X, and according to some secondary research, baby boomers too are sticking with gaming year after year. And like I mentioned, gaming is now mainstream. So really, no matter how you slice it, how you ask the question, and Kristen and I have really gone into this, there are a lot of ways you can ask this question of people. At the end of the day, the conclusion is the same. It's gone mainstream and it remains sticky as people age. So really just, gaming being the thing for kids and teens hasn't been the case for quite some time now. And I know that image is really hard to erase from the general public's mind. I can speak personally to playing with both my dad and uncle, both baby boomers, amongst many, many cousins scattered across Gen Z and millennials, as I leveled up a Tauren Hunter in World of Warcraft in the 3rd grade. Flash to literally last year, I'm now playing a human paladin to tank in World of Warcraft Season of Discovery with those same people still. But while we do see that the incidence of gaming stays high throughout these different age groups, there is a story behind all of those percentages. And, with our younger age groups and our older age groups, there's some specific nuances that I'll get into now. So as our gamers get older, what they reach for in their gaming library changes and expands. So as you see here, our Gen Zers are more concentrated in the games that are widely accessible, social, and fast, especially that battle royale genre. I'm sure there's a lot of audience members here today that know some sort of teen or tween who is playing Fortnite today. With these games, there's an element where these younger gamers are looking to prove themselves as a point of personal pride, as well as showing off to their peers, both online and in person. And hey, Fortnite is free to play. They don't have to negotiate with mom or dad to buy it. So that's always a plus as well. And in these spaces, they're showing off what they can do and what they can change in a space that treats them as an equal and rewards that skill and decision making. This may be something that they may not be able to fully experience in real life. So again, we're coming back to that inherent need for agency, even within this younger age group. So I am freezing a little bit, but we'll just keep it moving. If my connection gets crazy, we'll figure it out. But now with our emerging adults, these people are increasingly adding in open world adventure, RPG, and strategy games into their repertoire, with our younger millennials in particular trying out a bunch of different games on for size. And again, there are a couple of reasons for this, and we're going to tie it back to that pursuit of agency specifically. So, what does this all mean? So, starting on the left here with our younger folks, we see an inherent desire to be seen amongst their peers in the games that they play. So, it is not just the immediacy of seeing themselves ranked to the next level, but it's also reveling in how impressed their friends are with how they approach that league match, or the shock and awe over their play of the game in Overwatch. It's the adrenaline rush of going from match to match, pushing themselves to try new approaches and attack patterns, and also pushing their teammates and friends alike to the next level. It's also learning from those super frustrating losses as well. What this indicates is not just wanting to, make the right call at a crucial moment at the match, but something a bit deeper, as you can imagine, specifically rooted in meeting those emotional needs of theirs. It's developing the competence to make that call in game. This is likely the first environment that they've been in where they have to quote unquote prove themselves to strangers, since let's face it, they are not just always playing with their real life friends. Sorry, parents, if this is how you're finding out about that today. And to do that, they need to prove themselves with just their skill alone, right? And seeing those wins, seeing those rank ups, just seeing those things pile up, that's really their social currency here. And it's only something that they can do at the keyboard or controller, whatever their platform may be. In short, giving them a taste of agency in a world where they just may be a little too young to be heard as an equal at that table in the decision making. Then moving to the right here, as people get older, they shift to games where they return time and time again, where their progress and decision making are rewarded with more fully developed characters, more achievements, and just richer worlds in general. And what this shows is that, hey, people are not hanging up video games because they're too old to play video games anymore. It's actually something a bit more sticky here. They're instead moving into a new gaming chapter that is more reflective of their changing lifestyles and the different emotional needs that come with that. So, for example, I work full time. I don't have time to compete to the degree that I used to anymore. But I am still looking for that sense of accomplishment by discovering what Bohemia was like in 1403, or I'm trying to figure out how to defeat the Absolute and save the Forgotten Realms, specifically in Baldur's Gate 3 with a new character or game approach. For reference, I have never been able to actually do an evil playthrough in that game, but boy, do I try new things when I am the hero at the story, at the heart of the story. So there's that. But it's not to say that my sense of accomplishment is just coming from gaming. But really, again, that sense of agency and just seeing those decisions mattering in a space such as that. So what does this all mean for you? When Kristen and I were chatting, getting ready for this webinar, we wanted to, have a couple of smart thoughts about gaming and what it meant for brands. And, we wanted, insights for tech people. We want insights for gaming people and, all the other industries that fall in between. But we did realize that the insights that we uncovered could be used across all sorts of industries, or at the very least, for partnerships with gaming franchises and brands. So starting on the left here, keeping in mind, it's about creating quick wins for people and celebrating the progress that they make on a day-to-day basis. It's about creating brand experiences that they can immerse themselves into when they want. It's not just blowing up their phones with notifications and product updates. Give them a reason to want to be in your brand world and to reveal the complexities around what you have to offer. And as a brand, acknowledge when your customers give a damn about what you're doing. Don't take it for granted. And as we've learned, as people grow up while they game, they need their needs and genres shift as they move into different life stages. So again, it is rewarding those quick behavioral wins, but it is a bit more complicated than that. It's, tapping into the older gamers' desire for something a bit more layered as they grow with you as a brand.
Yeah, before we go on to the AI section, I just wanted to kind of dwell on the slide just a little bit, and especially that first notion of capture the spirit of quick wins and reward progress. That's essentially the same exact implication that we had in the Gen Z and Money webinar, where it was about, reward the little wins that they do on a daily basis, because the road to financial security, or the road to mental well-being, or the road to physical well-being is a long road. So this idea of rewarding Gen Z for their quick wins and rewarding them for progress resonates across category and across brands. They're not seeking perfection. They also don't want to wait until they have achieved some huge milestone goal. They want that reinforcement along the way. And dare I say, we all sort of spark to that kind of validation and reward. So as we complete the webinar, talk a little bit about AI. We've seen technology help Gen Z regulate emotions with gaming and with social media. We've seen it provide a sense of agency through gaming for Gen Zers, where they've got, full control over the world that they are creating, not necessarily always what happens in that world, but they have made a deliberate choice to be in the world that they've chosen to be in. But increasingly, AI is coming on the scene. And it would be, it's almost one of those cliche things that Caroline mentioned. You have to say it. It's the most transformational technology that likely any of us will ever see in our lifetime. Some people call it the most transformational general purpose technology, or innovation, right up there with electricity. So for Gen Z, this is not simply another technology to learn or adapt. It's the first generation to come of age with an intelligent partner for creating, for decision making, and for navigating their life. So we're already in the early majority phase for younger Gen Z. Older Gen Z is already in the late majority phase. Everybody loves the diffusion of innovation curve. I'm not opposed to it myself, or I wouldn't have had it in this slide show. But what makes it different is it's not a binary. It's not, are you using a cell phone? Are you not? Are you using a smart home system? Are you not? There's all these different gradations of how AI can be used. So this is just the first step of how many are using it at least regularly. And we have even more, about 75% across cohorts and markets, who are using AI at least occasionally. Like gaming and like social media and like tech in general, adoption doesn't come without strife. So based on our eCollage work, we've got on the right-hand side, or the left-hand side rather, title AI and its impact, it's good. I feel AI has made my life better by simplifying learning and automating mundane work, says a 22-year-old male from the UK. But we also saw AI come up in the question that we asked about the biggest fear in life, where we had multiple people say, these people are posting about, remember this was a projective technique, about how AI is going to absorb all the graduate jobs in their field by the time they graduate, and now they wonder what they would have done had they been able to go back in time. That's from an 18-year-old. Imagine an 18-year-old already having that sense of, did I make a good or bad decision for the rest of my life? And should I go back in time if I could? 18. Another male in the US this time, the lack of job and financial opportunities for people my age, and the rise of AI and tech companies ruining the environment. I'm not going to say that the biggest fear in life, an overwhelming majority, were thinking about data centers, but there absolutely were a few Gen Zers who were making that connection between AI taking away jobs, running tech companies, and ruining the environment and doing environmental damage. So this is weighing heavy on their mind. Again, they're not blindly marching forward and looking at AI as the next cool thing. That's not the way they're viewing AI. So I mentioned earlier that the data will show you about what they're doing is a snapshot in time. These could be different tomorrow. They can be different next week. It's simultaneously driven by what the technology can do and what Gen Z wants it to do. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to talk about a little bit of structure that we can put behind the different activities that people, including Gen Z, do with AI. So this framework of clerk, collaborator, and coach was inspired by an interview that was given by Andrew McAfee. He is part of the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy. He is an entrepreneur who has co-founded a company that helps businesses bring AI into their processes and maximize the role it can play. I came across this framework as part of my role as a Board of Education member. Our middle school received a grant for AI, and they brought in a consultant that talked to us all about this framework. Now, in Andrew McAfee's framework, collaborator is actually called colleague because his framework was designed to be about how we all white-collar workers use AI. But the more I thought about it, I was like, this is a framework where we can really think about how Gen Z and how people outside of the workforce or inside of the workforce can have a relationship with these different roles or archetypes of AI. So I switched to collaborator because it's just a bit broader. So what does a clerk do? And I know that clerk is an old-fashioned term, but quite frankly, the alliteration is what made this stick in my mind, so that I hope that it does the same for you. The use of the word clerk also reminds us that this is not a consumer-facing framework. This is not about using these terms in our messaging or communication or storytelling. This is for us internally. And what it is it's a way to think about what do we want our AI, the AI that we are using to market, to infuse into our products, to give access to Gen Z. What do we want this to do for Gen Z? What role do we want it to play in their lives? So what does a clerk do? Clerk helps me get things done faster, more efficiently, frees up time. It's the answer to the question of, I don't want to do this, somebody else take it off my plate. It's not worth my time. It's boring, whatever the case might be. Collaborator helps us think through ideas, compare different options, and improve or elevate our work product, so to speak. It answers the question or the need state of, I don't want to do this alone. I want somebody here to partner alongside me. What about a coach? A coach is really that highest order of the type of relationship that someone could have with AI. Think about what a coach does in our professional lives, in our lives as athletes, whatever the case is. A coach helps you develop yourself, pushes us to a higher bar through giving guided reflection and advice. These things are not necessarily additive. It's not like you move from clerk to collaborator or coach, leaving the other phrase behind. But what it does do and demand is that clerk is typically the first interaction we have with AI. And if trust isn't built at that clerk stage, no one's ever going to move on to the collaborator stage. If trust isn't built at the collaborator stage, no one's ever going to start using AI as a coach. So these are really critical frameworks to think about how we're putting them out there for Gen Z to consume and engage with. So if we think about the data that I showed you on a previous slide, what I've done here is we've aligned all of the activities that we asked about in the survey along this clerk, collaborator, coach framework. And you can see that some of these things go up with age, using AI as a clerk. That's largely because of people who are in the workforce and are using it to automate or simplify work tasks. Learning about or researching new topic is also more common with age, as is collaborator in terms of planning, organizing, and structuring. But young people are more likely to use AI to brainstorm and create content, and they are also, in a way, more likely to be using AI as a coach and using AI to reflect on their thoughts, their feelings, or personal challenges. We had an incoming hypothesis that this framework would sort of align with life stage, and you can see that with that collaborator and that coaching archetype, it's an inverse relationship with age. The archetypes don't evolve, the people do. So the big takeaway here is that when we think about using AI and in a collaborative role, if we're putting a product out there that we want Gen Z to think about as a collaborator, well, for younger Gen Zs, think about ways in which the AI that you're putting out there can be a creative partner, can actually help them create content, create images, create games, whatever the case is. Whereas for older Gen Z and millennials, they're looking for more of a practical partner. Will younger Gen Z outgrow the creative partner role? I'm not really sure. I think they're going to hold on to it more so than Gen Z and millennials are embracing it right now. But life will move them in a direction where they do look to AI for a more practical navigation of life. So when it comes to AI and how people are using it to make decisions, these are all the ways that they're using it. They want it to reduce their mental load, expand options without overwhelming, and give them reasons to believe in your recommendation. So the takeaway here is people are not ceding control. AI is not just giving them answers, but they're supporting the decisions they make. What does it mean for brands? It means we have to think beyond productivity, think beyond AI as a clerk, and really think about how can we support exploration, creativity, and navigation. Consider AI a new audience. So I'm certainly not an SEO expert by any stretch of the imaginations, but things are changing and they're changing rapidly. So not only do you have to think about making yourself findable by people, you have to think about making yourself findable with the information you want brought forth to an AI bot. So I'll turn over to Carolyn to wrap us up with the 5 things to remember about Gen Z.
Yes. So starting on the left here, what did we learn today? Gen Z embraces technology with optimism and skepticism. And we also learned today that 3 and 4 Gen Zers say that, tech is improving their well-being, but they simultaneously acknowledge that it creates overwhelm. So it's neither wholly good or bad. And their mindset is that both things can be true at once. Then second, we learned that technology is deeply personal to Gen Z, somewhat more of a relationship versus just a practical tool that they, open up on occasion. It's something that helps them feel more connected, capable, creative, and most importantly, in control. Third, we uncovered that Gen Z uses technology to meet distinct human needs of theirs. Where they may lack a clear voice IRL, they can develop and deploy it online, right? Kind of like as a practice ground. In this case, the technology is really just the medium. And what's more interesting is the human need that these tools are fulfilling for this age group, especially those more emotional ones. Fourth, we discovered that AI is changing how decisions get made, but not who is making them. So they're not blindly following whatever ChatGPT spits out. It's just helping them lessen the research mental load ever so slightly. But the key thing here is that they are still in the driver's seat when it comes to the final decision, so they are not releasing the reins entirely. And then lastly, AI is not just one thing for AI. So as Kristen shared with us, we learned that AI can play the role of clerk, collaborator, and coach. And as an English degree holder, boy, do I love alliteration and consonants. So it's going to stick with me for sure. And whatever the need may be, AI is helping Gen Z prepare and plan for the future in whatever form or facet that may be.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm gonna skip us through to some slides. When we ask people what makes a tech brand feel responsible and safe, privacy. Privacy is table stakes. We didn't have any data in the presentation that spoke to, no one authentically brings up, oh, I'm worried about privacy. But in every research study that we have done related to technology, privacy is table stakes. How you can differentiate yourself is how you talk about this privacy, how transparent you are, and how much control you're giving people, not just over privacy, but control over the content that they're seeing and control over some mental safeguards. So for brands, privacy is table stakes. Give users settings that reduce noise. We talked about that when we were in the social media and the gaming sections. And design for support, not dependency. And that was a theme that I hope came through to everyone in the AI section. If you watch this on playback, what you'll see here on these slides are what people think makes an AI technology brand that's on the way up. It's all about innovation. It's all about creating new products. And look at the quote on the bottom left. AI isn't just a side bet. It's being deeply embedded into everything they do. They want AI to feel less like an unpredictable chatbot and more like a reliable enhancement of tools people already depend on. These are quotes from survey respondents, Gen Zers. And what makes a brand go on the way down? Well, perception turns negative when AI innovation feels rushed or gimmicky, and especially when they come at the expense of core products. So how do we design for Gen Z? Reduce pressure, build capability and capacity, increasing the range of things they think about and know how to do. Respect the attention and the time they're giving you. Think alongside them, not in an AI way. I did not once say, and this is very intentional, that AI is a thinking partner. But what we need to do is put a Gen Z hat on, think about all the things that we know about Gen Z and anticipate what they want. And then, of course, keep evolving. Because at the end of the day, technology might start by helping Gen Z do things, but where it ends is by helping them become who they want to become. And I know we went a little bit over on time, so we apologize for not having time to ask questions. If you did send in a question, we will look to answer it in short order. And if a question came along while we were talking, or you think about something as you walk away from the webinar today, please feel free to send them in. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.